This is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Jay Will, and I'm down to dunk.
They had. Here we go.
I'm Isaiah Hartenstein, and I'm down to dunk.
I hope, savior of basketball has won.
Well, the torture chamber has been going pretty well.
I'm Aaron Wiggins, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Chet Holmgren, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mark Dagnall, and I'm down to dunk.
He just does a big smile and
I feel blessed by God to be here down to dunk, be here with you.
I'm Alex Caruso, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm AJ Mitchell, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Isaiah Joe, and I'm down to dunk.
Oh, jeez. Are you going to sing it good enough for me to guess it, or?
Panhandle. Jeez. I'm tweaking.
Name 2 famous Oklahomans.
Myself and Jalen Williams.
Is that a crazy answer?
All my friends call me Bob.
Where's Rachel? Unique story. You lived a whole life.
Plain?
Plain.
This is Cason Wallace, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
True blood Oklahoma.
That's right.
Pretty exciting, if you ask me.
This is J-Dub, world champion J-Dub, and I'm down to dunk. And eat burgers.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. Before I get to a new friend of mine, Adam Aaronson, I want to tell you about 2 other friends of mine, Aaron and Drew Reese of Shelter Insurance. You can give them a call, 405-773-5500 or 405-478-7714 today. Listen, I don't know what insurance you have. I don't have that information. It'd be weird if I did, but I can tell you this. These 2 guys are great guys that can help you out, that are going to save you money, and they love the Thunder too. So with whatever happens in this Houston game today, they can either commiserate with you or celebrate with you. Promise you that. Give them a call or text today and support the people that support Down to Dunk. With me today to break down the Jared McCain trade is Adam Aaronson of the Philly Voice. Adam, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So the Thunder traded for Jared McCain. We'll talk about his fit first. I'm endlessly fascinated by this Daryl Morey press conference that happened. I think a lot of Thunder fans probably just saw the quote about selling high, which is an interesting quote in itself. I think there's a little bit more context around it that you can help provide for us. But let's first just talk about McCain's fit, kind of where he is health-wise and all of that. But let's talk about when you saw this, and when you think about it from the Thunder side, how do you think McCain fits in OKC?
I like the fit a lot. There's obviously not much that the Thunder actually necessarily need, given how good they are. No. But I think you could look at, some more three-point shooting, some more offensive punch on the perimeter is something that might help long-term. Exactly how he fits into this, years down the line, I'm not sure. Is he the long-term replacement for Isaiah Joe as the Sixers cast-off turned awesome Thunder offensive bench guard? Is it something beyond that? I don't know. But I like the fit a lot at the very least. Obviously, they have more than strong enough of a defensive infrastructure to sort of insulate him. And he's not unplayable defensively, but he is going to be somewhat of a weak link. And he brings them some stuff that they don't necessarily have an abundance of. I like the fact that I think he's a really good guard to guard screener. I think something like that makes him a really nice fit with SGA and someone that can help make his life easier. And teams are going to trap Shea, and when they do that, Jared might be the beneficiary. So there are a lot of reasons I like the fit for him. I obviously don't know exactly how significant his role will be on this team as he tries to acclimate in the 2 months or however long before the playoffs. But I think moving forward, this is another sort of cost-controlled guy that probably fits what they want to do. I think everyone has already commented on how he'll clearly be a great culture fit in OKC as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. So I think given how many picks the Thunder have, including this year, and just the sheer fact that it wasn't going to be possible for them to make all of those picks. I'm sure we'll still see Presti trade first rounders for future first rounders this year and whatnot.
Yep.
And keep kicking that can down the road. But I think another way to utilize those, if you can, would be to get a young player who might fit the identity of your team, who might bring something that you don't necessarily have an abundance of. And I think Jared sort of fits that bill.
So you get to be around the team quite a bit. You have a favorite interaction that you've had with Jared?
Ooh, favorite interaction. This is a funny one. I think I could tell this. So Jared posted a farewell video to Sixers fans on his TikTok of him singing an Olivia Dean song.
Yes.
I walked into the Sixers locker room for the open pregame period a couple months ago, and he was blasting Olivia Dean. And so I was talking to him about the album, and I had just recently discovered this other singer who I've really become fond of. And I asked Jared if he had ever heard of her, and he was like, "No, I haven't. Tell me about her." So I'm telling him about her. Another Sixer who I won't name was like Jared, he's right, bro. Like, she's really good. And I was like, wow, this is not an interaction I expected to have today. Anyways, I ended up convincing Jared to listen to the album on a flight they had. He was like, "Is it a good late night flight album?" I was like, "Actually, it is." And when they got back from their road trip, he was like, "I listened to it. It was really good. I fell asleep listening to her voice." And I was like, "Great. I'm glad you liked it." And then he said he didn't expect that good of a put on from media. And I was like, what the hell? But no, he's really, I enjoyed getting to know Jared a lot. I think everybody on the Sixers beat would say the same thing, that all of our interactions with him have been incredibly pleasant, no matter what was going on with his season or his life or his body or anything else. And I think he's just a guy that people like being around. I think the pretty remarkable outpouring of support from Sixers teammates after the trade speaks for itself. It was almost the entire roster had posted an Instagram story of a picture of them with Jared within 24 hours of the news breaking.
Yep.
The way people talk about him, especially for such a young kid, speaks for itself. And I really enjoyed. First of all, I enjoyed watching him play. He's the kind of player I like watching and observing, but a really good person to get to know as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to know him. He will fit in well. There are a lot of guys that have similar, maybe not. I don't know. He just seems a little bit more outspoken than some of the other guys. Not outspoken is maybe not the right word. Maybe just a little bit more charismatic than some of the other guys. But I can't wait to get to know him. I'm really excited to be able to interview him and get to know him a little bit around the Thunder. Tell us about his health, because that's one of the reasons why he's available, really, is that he has not had the best season in terms of health. He hasn't, as a result of that, hasn't looked like he did, pre-injury last season. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so last year, I think everybody remembers, he was the clear favorite for Rookie of the Year in the first, he played 23 games, roughly the first 20 games of the season. He tore his meniscus, and then he got the meniscus repair, which is the longer surgery that usually takes you out for the season.
Yep.
And
which is a good thing, by the way, because if you have it
right, the idea is that it should prevent future injuries, whereas if you get the trim, you might be more susceptible to, for example, Joel Embiid tore his meniscus and then I believe got the trim, and then later on in his career tore his meniscus again.
Yeah.
So Jared, from what I understood, was going to be ready for training camp. They'd probably start the season without him playing both legs of back-to-backs. Maybe they give him maintenance days every now and then at practice, but largely was going to be okay. The day before media day, he tore the UCL in his right thumb, literally just tagging a roller, playing pickup. Mm-hmm. He just I believe what he said was his thumb got caught in a jersey, and he just felt a pop or whatever that feels like, and he knew immediately that it was torn. So the day before media day, after he's waited since December, and it's now the last day of September to get back, the whole thing was delayed by another month or so.
Remind me what hand that was.
That was right hand, so shooting hand.
Oh, it's shooting hand. Yeah. Brutal.
Yeah. So, right. And so he came back in early November. I want to say November 5th was his first game of the season. He's got this big, bulky brace on his left knee, which he has never played with before. He's got a splint on his right hand, which is a shooting hand, and he's a shooter. And the last thing you want is for him to change the way he shoots and change his mechanics temporarily, because eventually he'll get the splint off, and then you want his shot to look the same.
Yeah.
And he just didn't look like the same player. And I think the important thing to note about Jared, because his athleticism and his explosiveness has clearly been limited all year pretty significantly relative to what it was last year, was that he is not an explosive player when healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, what happened was he went from a low-level NBA athlete who does enough of all the other stuff to compensate for it to so below average as an athlete that not even like his craft as a finisher and his willingness to score at unique angles and his touch as a shooter and his strength bumping off of guys and rising up for mid-range jumpers and all of that stuff was not enough to compensate for his now even more pronounced athletic deficiency. So he's moving better now than he was then, pretty clearly. Still probably a far cry from where he was last year. But he pretty quickly, it was clear that the knee brace was particularly bothersome. And so they got rid of that. They put a big sleeve on there called Incrediwear. We're probably 5 weeks or so removed from him getting the splint removed off his thumb. I remember asking him, and you'll learn this about Jared, he does not like to say anything negative at any point. I asked him at one point early in the season how much the splint was bothering him, because he's just missing open shots in games that a shooter of his caliber you'd expect to go in. And he was like, well, I don't like to put anything bad out into the universe, so I'm not going to talk about the thumb. And I think that sort of told you what you needed to know about how that was impacting him.
Yeah.
And it's his last, 4 games as a Sixer, 5 games as a Sixer. He had 3 with at least 4 triples. He's been really good of late, which I think is part of why Sixers fans are so upset about all of this, is because it felt like, months of watching some really brutal Jared McCain minutes was finally going to pay off for them here.
Yeah.
And now he's on the Thunder. So long story short, he still has a ways to go in terms of his mobility. Not that he's ever going to be an above the rim player or particularly explosive at the NBA level.
Mm-hmm.
But he just needs some level of burst to get by people and to keep defenses honest. Otherwise, it'll be very easy for them to just sit on the jumpers. And the hand issue seems to be in the rearview mirror. Like I would always, just based on when I get to the arena and when I'm on the court, I would pretty much always watch his pregame warm up.
Yeah.
I actually just thought of a story with Jared that's funnier than the one I told you earlier, but I don't have to. Anyway, I'll just say his warm-ups are like electric, with just like NBA players generally don't miss in these pregame shooting sessions, but he really does not miss.
Okay.
And he'll shoot from like 30 feet out. He's like the touch that he has as a shooter is really special. And like, this is not, 38% on Basketball Reference looks good.
Yeah.
When you watch him play, like he has a chance to be like an A+ shooter.
Okay.
And he is really tapped into how he can utilize that to make the team better.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because the Thunder, they need shooting. Like that's the thing, that if they need anything, it's shooting. They have basically one guy in Isaiah Joe that is just a like pure lights out shooter. Everybody else is pretty streaky. It's not like they have a ton of bad shooters, but they have a lot of streaky shooters. And so just getting somebody else. And I loved hearing about the guard to guard screening, because a lot of the reason that those Shea and Isaiah Joe minutes have worked so well, if you go back in years past, like the 2-man combo that has the best net rating has typically been Shea and Joe. And so just having another guy that you can use to space the floor and then use as a guard to guard screener is big time. What was the story about?
A couple of weeks ago, he was walking over to a basket to do his pregame workout. Mm-hmm. And I'm usually pretty early to these games, and Jared warms up really early. Like Kyle Lowry warms up if the game's at 7, Kyle's on the court at like 4. Oh. And Jared will be the next guy out there. And Jared was walking to the other basket to shoot and start his work. And I was walking over there to watch him, and he took a shot that bounced right to me. And Jared spent a whole minute trying to convince me to shoot. And I was like, Jared, that is your job. That is not my job. I threw him the ball. He threw the ball back to me. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And I threw the ball because I can't shoot, which I then told him, like that's not my game. I have a floater and that's it. and he told me that my dream was still alive, and I was like, what dream? I'm not trying to play in the NBA. And he's like, you could do like a men's league. I'm like, Jared, I'm good. But yeah, I did forget about that. But you talking about his warm up did remind me of that. But again, that's just, he's like that with everyone. He's just like a fun loving kid who treats everybody really well, and is very easy to appreciate the way that he treats people.
Yeah, I love that. I love hearing that. I have kids. I have a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and 7-year-old that just love the Thunder, and they were really pumped to hear about the McCain's trade. One of my favorite things is, especially nowadays, like you don't get the chance to like tell somebody either on the phone or in person that like something happened. Like everybody just knows that it happened. But like getting to tell my kids that the Thunder traded for Jared McCain was a very fun moment because they were like, are you serious? Like they couldn't believe it. Like
and my 13-year-old brother texted me when the trade happened and said, like, I hope he fails his physical so he can stay on the Sixers. And I was like, the fact that you even can think of that is jarring to me. But he'll be a favorite of all the kids in Oklahoma City, I'm sure.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's talk about his limitations defensively, because I do think that is a point of discussion that I don't think people have. I mean, you're excited about him being here. All Thunder fans don't want to talk about that, but I do think it is something to discuss, especially when we're talking about a team like the Thunder that want to make these deep playoff runs. And when it comes down to it, like the weakest link on the court is going to get picked on. And so I'm just curious what you've seen from him defensively in the time he's been in Philly.
Yeah, so he's undersized with short arms and not great athleticism. So he's going to be a weak link defensively. But as I said earlier, I don't think he's unplayable, in part because the effort's always there and he's a smart player. Like he knows what he's doing. And he talked about that with us recently when he was really struggling offensively and it felt like he never got the ball. He was like, all I do now is I look at my plus minus and I'm just thinking about like, is there anything else I can do if I'm not getting the ball? And like, should be able, he's like, I should be able to be fine defensively. Like he's self-aware. He knows why people will try to pick on him, but he's like, I think I'm pretty smart and I like try hard. He recently, over the last couple of months, has started to do sort of a version of the TJ McConnell shtick of like, he hasn't, I don't think has gotten, I think maybe one of the backcourt steals, but he's just like constantly pressuring full court, just to do something that is impactful to the team. Because it felt like for there was a 6-week period where it felt like if he got the ball, it was a miracle in itself. And then it felt like he would be pressing, trying to get a shot off. Yeah. And he's the sort of player who has to be doing it within the flow of the offense, because if he tries to force it, he's going to get blocked because he's usually not blowing by anybody, particularly at this speed. But defensively, again, weak link, but not unplayable. And I would say many of the defensive concerns that existed with him here also stemmed from the fact that they have Tyrese Maxey locked into almost 40 minutes a game, and they have VJ Edgecombe playing 35 minutes a game, who is a very good guard defender, especially for a rookie, but a guard defender. And so all of a sudden you're really, really small. Maxey has long arms and has become a really great defensive playmaker off the ball, but is not someone that, is usually guarding up. The same is usually true for VJ, certainly for Jared. So I think his defensive concerns, I mean, anybody's defensive concerns are going to be less significant in OKC than on another team because of the other personnel and the coaching that exists there. But I think particularly a guard going from a small and athletic guard going from this year's Sixers to any version of this era of the Thunder is going to be way better off, and the team's going to have a much easier job insulating him. Does that mean he won't get picked on in the playoffs? Probably not. Is there a world where Dagnall in round 2 is like, I just can't play him anymore because they're picking on him over and over, and we can play, more Isaiah Joe minutes or more whoever? I know Isaiah ended up out of the rotation at some points last year, if I recall correctly, in the playoffs. But can we use our depth with other guys who maybe don't give us as much spacing as Jared does as a shooter, but are not going to get picked on defensively. That's definitely possible. But at the very least, he should be a situational piece in the playoffs where, like, if they need some sort of offensive spark, if they just need more space out there for Shea and J-Dub or whoever to get to work offensively and just have someone that can reliably knock down a spot up three that can screen for Shea, like I mentioned earlier, I think Jared will sort of fit that billing.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I've been trying to like frame it as like, listen, he's literally taking the spot that Usman Jang filled for the team. And, you know, who knows what role he fills immediately. I mean, for him, he's probably filling a role today for the Thunder.
I was going to say today, like, is he going to start today? Like, he's going to, I would imagine not, but he's got to be playing quite a bit, I would think.
I mean, there's no Shea, there's no Dub, there's no AJ Mitchell. And I mean, they need a guy like him.
Yeah.
To come
Somebody has to dribble.
Yeah. Somebody's got to dribble. Somebody's got to take the shots. And having a guy like that, I'll be really interested to see how he plays off of Isaiah Hartenstein, because he's somebody that is great off screens and kind of likes to run and get open. And Isaiah's really, really good at finding guys like that. He and Isaiah Joe have had good chemistry. So I'm really interested to see how that works. But yeah, like they just need guards at this point, which is funny because at some points you're like, why would they need more guards? And it's like, okay, with everybody out, even Topic being out is a thing for them. Okay, let's wrap talking about this Daryl Morey press conference, which there was like one quote that got to Thunder fans that they ran with him saying that he sold high on Jared. How did you take that? How did you take that with Daryl saying? Because it doesn't look good when you just read it on Twitter.
Right.
But how did you take that when he said that?
Yeah. So more context there probably would be helpful, which is he was talking about how the Sixers do a lot of research and analysis as far as what certain classes of players generally get traded for. If you're trading for a starter on a playoff team, what are you getting? Down to 6-man on a good team, everything like that. And he believes that the return they got for Jared of what we'll call it a late-ish first-round pick, could be mid to late first-round pick, depending on how the Rockets do. That and 3 second-round picks is like a starter-level return. And that on this team, there was not a path to Jared becoming a starter because they have Maxey, they have Edgecombe. Even right now, he's their fourth guard. He would have been their fourth guard because Quentin Grimes is there as well, who Nick Nurse trusts a lot more in part because of, Grimes is a plus defender and can guard up in the ways that some of the other guards in their rotation can't. So I think the point Morey was making was because I think a lot of Sixers fans saw this as last year he's great, this year he's awful, and then you trade him while he's awful. That sounds like it's a classic selling low.
Yeah.
Morey's point is I think that they're selling high still based on what he did last year, because obviously, Sam Presti would not be trading a first and 3 seconds for a guy doing what Jared is doing this year if there wasn't some evidence that there's something more there. And I think Daryl's case is just that he was selling high even when it feels like that's not the case, because Jared probably didn't have a path to a role that's significantly larger than what it is right now. Like, even if he made it through the season and he showed some signs of progress, and then Quentin Grimes leaves in unrestricted free agency and Jared's the third guard. He's still a third guard, and they think this is a starter level return. And I just think it boils down to the Sixers decided that they were willing to bet against Jared paying off for them as much as what this draft compensation will do. And Morey said that their goal was to flip those picks later on at the deadline for immediate rotation help, and then nothing materialized. I'm generally speaking, if you're doing something like that, you would wait until you have something lined up and then you do it.
Sure.
And I think the reality of it is they just decided as an organization that they were not as high on Jared as they were when they picked him 16th a couple of years ago, and said that they had him top 10 on their board, and said at the time that they could have traded him for a couple different intriguing veterans, but once Jared was still there for them, they had no questions about just taking him. it's upsetting for Sixers fans. It's for for a lot of the reasons that you can probably gather based on what I've talked about over the last 25 minutes here. Like they really like this kid, and it's someone that's really enjoyable to root for. And when he's going well, it's incredibly exciting for fans. And when he's not, you really want him to break through.
Mhm.
He had a couple breakthrough games in his last few games with the Sixers, and people were just like thrilled for this guy. And so I think a lot of the frustration on the Sixers fan side has been like a comment on selling high on a player. Like I understand what Morey was getting at, but it's probably not a great way to talk about like the fan favorite that you just traded with no, again, with like no warning. There were no Jared McCain trade rumors. This is not like, I mean, you heard from Jared himself. He had no idea that this was even a possibility. It was the same for Sixers fans. It was the same for me. I had no idea that was a possibility. So I think the Sixers are just organizationally making a bet that he is not worth nearly as much as he is being perceived as being worth, and that if they held on to him for much longer, that his value would still go down. And even considering how disappointing this season has been for Jared, that trading him now is still selling high.
Yeah. I hate the fact that he used those words, and maybe I don't know if he regrets it or not, but it just doesn't look. There's just no way to make it look good, even though like I understand the context of what he's saying, and if you are just looking at it coldly, like that's probably the return of a starter these days. You didn't see many first round picks go out. That had any quality. So
I'll just say if you told me before the deadline that they were going to trade Jared for picks, and what do you think they'll get? I would have guessed a middling first round pick and maybe a couple seconds. That's what I would have guessed based on the season he had, and that's what they got. And if you as an organization don't think that the player is going to pan out, and you can get a first and 3 second round picks for him, it's a no brainer. Where I personally sort of like I understand and agree with that logic. I just wouldn't have thrown in the towel. I've always been a pretty passionate believer in that, like Jared is going to reach whatever the best outcome for him is based on the way that he works and the way that he thinks about the game and the way that he's in tune with like the mental side of everything that is involved in his life and his job. And so we'll see. Obviously, as Daryl said, time will tell. It's not necessarily a bet I would have made, but I understand the bet for the Sixers given where their roster's at. But I love the bet for OKC because I mean everybody knows they have practically 1 million picks to use at some point over these next several years, and kicking the can down the road by trading first for future first is fine. But getting someone that could actually help you, someone that there's some sort of perceived upside in terms of like, I ran a Sixers survey before the season asking who would you rather have for the rest of their career, VJ Edgecombe or Jared McCain, and VJ won by literally one vote. It was like 361 to 359.
Wow.
That's how Sixers fans felt about Jared going into the season. I think those results would be different if people knew how good VJ was going to be right away.
Yeah.
But that's the way that Sixers fans were thinking about Jared going into the season, was that they were unsure if he was better or worse than the guy that they just picked third overall in the draft long term. So there's real upside here, but I think also the shooting provides a pretty reliable floor in terms of how he can join a team that already has a bunch of stars, obviously has the best perimeter scorer in the league and in a long time, and just make life easier for those guys.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I believe the Thunder had a lot of interest in Jared at the draft. Clearly they did. They wouldn't be trading for him now if they didn't. But I think if Topic wasn't necessarily there at 12, I think that they would have considered taking Jared as high as 12. And so this, for like the Thunder, they get an opportunity to just like have all the guys they liked in that draft.
Yeah.
And see how it works out. And
very early second draft.
Yeah, very early. It's really unusual. Usually it's in year 4 or year 3 even that you get these guys. But a chance to get him in early and develop him and kind of get him with Mark and the coaching staff, I think that he'll have a chance to thrive. Even though there's so many guys on this team, Mark has done a really good job of making sure that everybody at least gets a shot to thrive. And we saw it last year with AJ Mitchell, who was a two-way guy that, prior to the season, people would have been like, hey, I don't know that he has where does he fit here? Like, how is he going to get minutes? And, they always find ways to get guys minutes.
I would also just add, of course, Jared wants to play. And at some point, he, for the sake of his career, needs to be playing. But he's a guy who, when he's not playing, is not going to cause a stir in any way. Like, the Sixers were, going out of their way. When he had his first real breakout game, like a couple games back into being in the rotation against the Bucks, maybe last Tuesday. Time is a blur at this point, and it feels like years ago based on what's happened the last few days.
Right.
Everyone was just talking about how they were so impressed by how positive he was, where there was a 2-week period where he wasn't playing because the Sixers, for the first time in more than 2 years, were healthy, and it was just impossible to justify playing him anymore given how much of a struggle the minutes were. And everyone was just talking about how positive he was and how much they appreciated it. And then you could see that when he had that huge game. There's one video, he hit 5 threes in that game against the Bucks. And the fourth one, the Bucks call a timeout and Jared's running down the floor. And VJ looked like his head was going to explode. He was so excited. And the whole bench went nuts. And it was a really nice scene. And that was his second to last home game as a Sixer, I believe, which is pretty wild in retrospect. But yeah, this is not a guy that you're going to have to worry about, if he falls out of the rotation in the playoffs because of a matchup thing. This is not a guy who's going to, cause any issues.
Yeah, that's good to know. Go follow Adam on Twitter at Sixers Adam. Read his stuff at the Philly Voice. Anything else you'd like to promote before we get out of here?
I wrote recently a couple Jared stories that I liked. That one of them got in right at the buzzer on Tuesday about his relationship with Steph Curry and how he models his game after Steph.
Okay.
I would say when you watch Jared, you can tell that he's been preparing to play in the NBA at a size and athletic disadvantage. And a lot of the stuff he does off the ball, actually does sort of look somewhat like Steph. And I talked to him about how, that stuff is more Steph-like than just pulling up from 30 feet. Everyone does that now.
Yeah.
So I'll if you go to my Twitter, Sixers Adam, I'll retweet those stories in a minute if you want to read them. I also wanted to do this since I'm here. I don't have much use for this anymore, but I have this here, and I wanted to honor what is one of my favorite teams in the history of the NBA. The 2019-20 Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, let's go.
The 3 guard lineups, one of the best teams of all time. God, I love that team. It was an absolute classic. Chris Paul's my favorite player of all time. So wherever he goes, I'm always tuned into that team. And that team was amazing. What an incredible and beautiful basketball team that was.
It was so fun because there were no expectations. Everybody kind of thought the Thunder were going to be tanking that year.
Yeah.
Chris Paul was just no.
Not on Chris Paul's watch. And as I'm sure you remember, that team being good gave the Sixers their first round pick, which was top 20 protected. It landed at 21, and the Sixers took Tyrese Maxey.
Shout out to Mike Muscala, who had no clue that his three was going to do that.
None.
But you know what? That's okay. It would be such a bummer right now to be a Sixers fan with no Tyrese Maxey. So
yeah, that is. If there are Sixers fans watching right now, I know the Jared news is tough, but at least you still have Tyrese and VJ.
That's right. Little bit of news. Chet is going to be in the Shooting Stars competition.
Which is back.
It's back, which I love.
What a thrill.
With Scotty Barnes and Rip Hamilton. So that's very exciting. So another reason to tune into All-Star Weekend for Thunder fans. All right, Adam, thanks so much for coming on. Go read those pieces about Jared. I think those are certainly must reads. I'll retweet them as well. Hope you guys are doing well. The Thunder do play today against the Houston Rockets. I did want to get this out because we'll podcast about that game as well. But I did want to get Adam on here to just talk about Jared before we got to see him play. So hope everybody's doing well, and we will talk to you guys again on Monday.
Until the dawn, until the dawn.